Alright, this is Elite RC, and I basically came across some things. A few people have this kit, the Gtb Front disc brakes, but every time I see people's cars with it on it, it's not either set up right, or they have a problem bleeding the brakes, or just anything to do with the system. As we can tell, my rotors roll freely when the brakes are not engaged. And what I mean by the brake being engaged, this is pulled all the way out. What a lot of people don't know, you have to add in a spring right here to automatically pull it out when the brakes are not engaged. If you don't have this spring on here with this lock collar, your brake, this is never going to fully disengage. Like if you see when you press the throttle, it goes forward, which pulls this brake all the way out, which allows your brake rotors to roll freely. But if I engage the brakes, push that in, leave it like that, even though I don't have any fluid in the lines, we also about to bleed the brakes, it's still going to roll freely because my brakes are not engaged. But usually when it's like that, all the way back, brakes fully engaged, you can't move this. And I'm going to show you once I bleed my brakes, because I had to replace a brake line, which was this line. Last time I ran it, I broke it back in right in the beginning of the summer. I had a video on it too. It's called Fun in the Sun. Haven't driven it since. So I stripped it down, of course, engine out. Going over a few things, rebuilt the shocks, new shock springs. It was that time. Basically, I'm going to show you how to bleed the brakes and make sure that the brakes are properly working after you bleed the brakes. So let's get to it. I'm set up this camera right here to stay just like this. Alright, let's get to it. Basically, what you're going to need to complete the process of bleeding the brakes is, I use dot 3 heavy duty STP. You can use dot 3 or dot 4, it doesn't matter. Basically, you got your syringe. You need your syringe, and you also need, this goes into the inlet valve. Alright, let's get a few other things together. Yeah, you do see an E word in front of you. I gave that to my son, and he ain't dealing with any fuel yet. So he's going to learn on that. He's about 4 years old, so we're going to see how that goes. It's going to be wild, because that's how wild he is with a RC car. Pedal to the metal. I'm doing a little work around the shop. Alright, so I have a screw. I put this screw on. There we go. It's nice and tight. I put this screw on with a gasket at the end of it. It holds better than the original screw that come with it. I just took a flathead screw, cut it. If you could tell, I took my Dremel and cut it down. And I also have my gasket right here compressed a little more. It gives it a little more protection of what I need from it. You add this part on, which you all know what this is. This comes with the kit. If you notice, I don't use the plastic piece they gave. I use fuel line. Yep, that right there, that fuel line is a heavy duty fuel line. Then after you do that, where are my wrenches? Is that a 7? Let's see if I think it's a 7. Is it a 7? Yeah, it's a 7. I tighten this down a little bit. You don't want to torque it down too much. You just want to get it nice and snug. Okay, that right there. This right here is already brake fluid from a previous job. I'm going to add to this. You want to get as few air bubbles as possible because you don't want as much. You want to go with as little air in the system as possible. The least amount of air in the system, the better the braking. Pull it up in a syringe. Drop it. Drop the syringe down in here. Now, since I got it set up like that, we're going to leave that for right there for right now. Get you some shop towels. And you want to pretty much line them up just in case you have a leak while you're injecting it. Because if you have a leak, this brake fluid is going to go everywhere. I repeat, everywhere. Want to get it all the way around it as much as you can. So you see I don't play with this situation. So now you got that fully wrapped. See if I can see it. I can see it. Okay. Then I have, you can see on the floor, I got my 2 buckets. Want to make sure they're lined up. Looks good. Now, I have an 8. Yeah, you can see 9 30-seconds is what fits this. You're gonna unloosen this, the bleeder valves. Want to loosen them up so you can get it to drip. It's just like bleeding a regular brake system, just like it. I'm gonna make sure both of them are opened up. So the fluid could just leak straight through as you're pumping it. You see all my tubes are right here. And also coming through here, I'm gonna make sure, you also want to make sure there are no leaks at your connection points, none. So here we go. Make sure my buckets are all good to go. And let's start fueling. As you can see, I only got one dripping so far. Well, I got this one dripping, but it's barely dripping. It's a lot of air on that side. All the air is coming out. Oh, there we go, right there. Pouring out now. And now, all the air is still coming out. But it's this side right here. That one's flowing just right. Come on. Air bubbles on this side. There we go. There we go. Now start tightening it up. Steady, I'm still pushing it slowly. So tighten that side, tighten this side. Those two sides are fully tightened. And you can just take this off. As you see, no air lines in the system, not a single one, not a single air bubble. Take your syringe, put the fluid back in there. Now this is where this comes back in. We're going to come in, unloosen this. Lean back so you can see it. Okay. That goes right there. Then you pat that down with the towel. Pat it down. You want that surface kind of dry before we put the cap back on. We're going to screw this cap back on by hand first. Get the feed in. Okay. I'm going to wipe this down because of course you're going to have fluid all over it. Brake fluid. I'm going to come up here and torque it down. Just want to push a little fluid out. I'm going to wipe that down. You got to be careful when you're torquing this down up here, or you will either strip out a bolt or break the bolt in the aluminum. Okay. As tight as it needs to be. Okay, now you remove this. Remove your shop towel. Make sure your canvas is clean. And like I said, no air bubbles. Zero air bubbles, zero air bubbles. Now quite naturally, since I did have to disconnect it, once I engage this, see, you see the resistance on it? It pushes that right out. Now, remember I told you, with the operation, turn this, your rotors turn just fine. Engage the brakes. That's, you can't turn it if you wanted to. That's locked. Locked. I have one small little bubble right there, one small little bubble right there. And basically, I've had to where I had fluid in these lines for a year. And the only reason why I had to replace the fluid is because this is airtight. You see that? Nothing came out the lid when I engaged it. Oh, my whole line, the whole system is airtight. Airtight, airtight. No fluid anywhere. And that's how you want it. I'm gonna give you a better demonstration. Let's put a wheel on her. Let's get a wheel. Reason why I say I like the hydraulic brakes better than the cable brakes. If you break this line, all you gotta do is replace the plastic. I have replacement parts for days. Line. Order this online for all the replacement line and the new parts. Comes 30 bucks out of China. No problem. I have that for days. That'll last me years. If you bend one of those cable lines at the connection point, it's done. if I break one of these plastic tubes, I just go and replace the line just like I did. It's not a problem. It only takes me probably about a half hour to redo the brakes. Okay, that's the wheel turning, brakes, lock. Disengage it. The wheel can turn, locked. But look, you will brake before you get this wheel to turn with the gauges, with the brakes engaged, which I have the brakes engaged at the servo turning. I have a serious servo right here. This servo is like 797 ounce inches or some shit like that. It's called a Monster Savox Digital SB2290. Servo is serious. Cost $150 on sale. Basically, because it takes a lot of torque to press these brakes in, but it jams it back with no problem. You will break your whole front, all this plastic and all this shit, you'll break your whole front before you move this wheel. And that's on both sides. This is locked right now. Disengage it, and you see you can turn it. Only reason why you can turn it, because you gotta have that spring to pull this out. The spring puts pressure on the end of this lock collar, which pulls the rod all the way out of the master cylinder. You gotta have that. And that's what I want to show people. I see a lot of people not even using the brake system when I see it, and I wonder why. And then when I see the setup, I see the setup is all wrong. Then I have a few questions of people asking me about it, so that's what it takes to bleed the brakes, which is no time at all. And like I said, you don't have to run your rears. The only reason why I keep my rears on, so if I do break a brake line, I still have the rears to stop. But my front stop before them rears even engage. Once that front lock up, the rears, you never even see that tire stop, because the front's engaged so quick it stops it on a dime. I'm about to clean up once again. This Elite RC, and that's how you actually set up your GTB brake system. And of course, I just showed you how to bleed the brakes. Elite RC out.